once you unless you know the specific problem list of the patient, the specific formulation of the patient, you will not be able to come up with specific management of this patient. All right. So thank you for those who have shared their answer for the formulation. So that wasn't part of the assessment. The whole idea is for you to get it done so that you think about it, and then you can compare with what we have, and then we can apply the same principle to other cases that you'll see lah. All right. So for predisposing factors, you can look at your own answer, and then we just share. I'll share with you pretty much, bukanlah nak kata skema, tapi possibly important things that you should have covered and you should have included. Okay, and some of you had the ideas there, tapi maybe you salah letak dekat area kat mana, and sometimes I saw ada psychological component letak dekat social, ada biological letak dekat psychological, and so this is when you can regroup and see and look back at your answer so that you can improve further lah. Right, so for predisposing factors in this case, as we highlighted before, number 1 is chronic illness, number 2 is family history. Now, can you think of any other biological predisposing factors other than what's here? It may not be relevant in this case, tapi it's a form of biological predisposing factors. Apa lagi contoh biological predisposing factor? Apa biological condition yang predispose somebody to have mental illness?
For example, like childhood CNS infection.
Okay, good. All right. So basically, any disorder that can cause insult to the brain, any condition that can cause brain insult. All right, so brain insult can be acquired or can be congenital. Okay, something that happened naturally at birth, AV malformation ke whatever congenital condition yang dia ada, and ataupun something yang acquired. Contoh acquired apa? Tadi you friend bagi example CNS infection, lagi?
Head trauma.
Okay, good. Head trauma. Alright. Apa lagi contoh other biological predisposing factors? So dah tak payah dah sebut biological problem tu, trauma at birth, apa semua tu termasuk dalam brain insult. Apa lagi contoh biological predisposing factor?
Mental problem in pregnancy.
Problem in pregnancy. Siapa punya pregnancy? Patients tu punya pregnancy ke? Patients tu punya mother punya pregnancy?
Mother.
Okay. Contoh? Apa problem in pregnancy?
Diabetes in pregnancy.
Okay. So chronic illness in metabolic disorder during pregnancy. Ataupun if you read pasal schizophrenia, you come across something like rubella infection, for example, and or viral infection during pregnancy that can predispose somebody to have somehow mental illness predisposition to the child. Okay, so those are example. Another one yang common yang you haven't mentioned, I'm surprised that you haven't mentioned, adalah substance use. Okay, so substance use is biological. It affects your brain. Cumanya, I know we talk about brain, tapi specifically substance is something you need to highlight. Especially contohnya apa contoh substance yang has high predisposition to development of psychotic related disorder? Apa contoh substance ataupun substance lah?
Cocaine.
Cannabis.
Okay, so among all substance yang paling strong predisposition sebenarnya adalah cannabis. Okay, so heroin stimulan ni rendah, kurang. Alright, okay. Psychological predisposition in this patient. Okay, so some of you have highlighted poor coping, personality structure. What about his personality yang make him predisposed to mental illness, predisposed to this condition? So under psychological personality structure, personality style, personality traits. So apa personality style dia yang make him predisposed to this condition?
Perfectionist.
Okay, so macam how do you relate perfectionist and depression?
They tend to become very rigid and not flexible with conditions. They always have to follow their rules.
Okay. So macam how do you relate to this case? Being perfectionist with what he's gone through in this case, and how did that lead to his depression? So ini kita bagi formulation. Formulation ni maksudnya you making analysis, you making hypothesis. I think he's depressed because of this. So that's what formulation is all about. So macam how do you relate? Sama lah, Zai.
I'm not sure how because
Orang lain? Syazwani? Syazwani jawab dah tadi. Sama? You have any suggestion how being a perfectionist, given what he's gone through, and how did that make or contribute to his depressive episode?
Because he wants everything done perfect. So when it's not done as perfect as he wants, can lead to depression. Like for example, he lost his retirement fund. So this is for him is not perfect. So that's why he has depression.
All right. So true. So that's one hypothesis, which help us to understand why he developed depression in this case. All right. So perfectionist is one personality traits that can explain the development of depression. Any other psychological predisposing factors? Anyone else have more than personality style? Poor coping. We talk about poor coping as one of the psychological predisposing factors. Another one?
Like kalau rarely share his problem.
So that's also under poor coping.
Okay.
Arif? Afif?
Maybe the patient has a strict father.
Okay, good. So what about it? We all have strict father. How did that? How come some lead to depression, some don't? So what about strict father tu?
For example, when the patient has strict father, so it develops a kind of a personality yang bila macam they do things that their father would not like, it will macam cause an effect to them.
Okay, what kind of parenting style do we call that? Parents who put so many rules and regulation and not so much emotionally attached to the child. Ingat year 1 punya topik.
Authoritative parenting.
Authoritative ke authoritarian?
Authoritarian.
Authoritarian. Authoritative tu positif lah. So authoritative ni well balanced between response and control. So authoritarian ni dia macam kita panggil macam dictatorship. Okay. So authoritarian parenting may leads to maybe apa yang kita panggil sebagai childhood adversity. Childhood adversity ni maksudnya hardship during childhood. So another childhood adversity yang dia also has adalah he was brought up in a very poor family, and so one of the possible things that could have happened adalah elements of emotional abuse, physical abuse, trauma, domestic violence. So these are apa yang kita panggil sebagai psychological predisposing factors. Alright. So social not so much. In terms of precipitating, kita talk about social precipitating factor, retirement, financial, precipitating factors. Kalau psychological, I didn't see many of you write this in your formulation, but that's okay if you didn't recognize. But I put in there under precipitating factors adalah guilt. or loss of feeling lost. Okay, so this is psychological, tapi this is yang create dia started off dia punya depressed feeling lah. So it's under psychological. So of course the guilt and loss tu comes from the social problem yang dia ada tu lah, the financial, the retirement. Now biological precipitating factors, is there any biological precipitating factors in this case? Bila you buat formulation, sebenarnya tak perlu semua kotak tu dipenuhkan. Some just tak ada. Okay. So apa contoh biological precipitating factors? So in this case tak ada. Tapi apa contoh biological precipitating factors? In other cases.
Substance abuse.
Okay, so substance use can be one of biological precipitating factors. Also intoxication, withdrawal, so that is biological lagi. Tadi ada
compliance to medication.
Okay, so if patient's already under treatment, so non-compliant to treatment tu can be under biological precipitating factors. Maksudnya dia tak ada medication to start with. Tapi for somebody yang who hasn't been on medication, dia tak boleh lah letak dia precipitating factors. So in this case, what could have been a biological precipitating factor? It is not, but it potentially can cause biological precipitating. Tengok what
the medication that the patient already took. So it can cause some medication such as hypertension medication can cause depressive symptoms.
Okay, boleh. If your diagnosis is substance medication induced depression, that of course the biological precipitating is that lah. And tapi think about patient has mental illness. The patient has a lot of medical illness. So imagine that at some point recently dia dapat stroke, for example. Okay, so as a result of the stroke tu dia jadi ada visual impairment ke, dia ada gait disturbance ke, dia perlu bergantung pada orang lain untuk BU, PO dan for example. So that's biological precipitating factor dia adalah recent onset of stroke, recent onset of cardiovascular problem. So that is also an example. Kalau female cases, another common one, postpartum pregnancy. So postpartum depression. So postpartum state tu is biological precipitating factors. Okay, so these are example of things that you need to explore in your patients. Alright, so perpetuating ni senang. Perpetuating ni is you look up in the column, okay, whatever yang ada dekat atas tu yang still continue to be a problem, then dia akan masuk dalam precipitating factors. Okay, contoh kalau you tengok dekat biological column, ada chronic illness and family history. So family history tak continuous, so chronic illness continuous, so chronic illness saja yang bawa ke bawah. Poor coping, is it still a problem? If it's still a problem, then you bring it down to population factors. Retirement, financial still problem, you bring it down. Dah settle, tak payah letak dekat situ. So of course spiritual, you tengok into the spiritual aspect lah. Nanti later on kita cerita sikit pasal spiritual. I just want you to focus on the management, on the formulation for this case. Alright, so daripada situ, you carry on dengan management punya column. Alright, so management, investigation dengan treatment, just follow the column underneath sahaja. So in order to decide, you look up untuk tengok apa yang ada. So contoh under biological investigation, disebabkan dekat atas ni ada chronic illness, diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, what not. So under investigation, of course you would want to know patient punya HbA1c, patient punya latest renal function, liver function, what not. So kalau dekat atas ni tak ada chronic illness, tak pasal-pasal you nak letak HbA1c. Kenapa you nak letak HbA1c? Because it has nothing to do with the management of this case. Betul tak? Kalau dekat atas ni you tengok, precipitating factor dia adalah dia menopause, for example. So under this, maybe you nak buat any investigation related to gynecological punya condition. Dekat atas ni ada substance. Of course bawah ni you nak buat urine test. Atas ni ada recent stroke. Bawah ni you nak buat CT scan, for example, under investigation. So relate it back to apa yang ada dekat situ, rather than just look randomly dekat things that you can recall from seminar or classes yang ada. Okay, so investigation semua tu macam biasalah, you buat sama ada diagnostic atau baseline. Alright, for psychological, so what do you have for psychological? Adeline? Psychological investigation?
DAS 21 for screening.
Okay, so DAS tu betul, screening tu salah. So in the exam awak jawab screening, saya ketuk kepala. Kenapa screening salah? Why wouldn't you use DAS for screening? Kenapa salah guna DAS untuk screening? Tahu tak? Humaira? Kenapa kita tak boleh include dalam our investigation, I want to use DAS to screen for depression? Why?
I'm not sure.
Macam, how do you diagnose depression?
DAS 21 is diagnostic.
Is DAS 21 diagnostic? How do you diagnose major depressive disorder?
Based on the DSM-5.
There's an
Based
criteria.
based on the DSM-5 criteria, which basically depends on symptom and signs. So based on clinical assessment. So DAS is what? DAS ni is a questionnaire based on what? Based on patient's reported symptom. Okay. So if you already, by the time you come to the investigation, have you already established signs and symptoms of depression or not? Dah lah kan, sebab tu you come up with all of these investigation formulations. So by this time, you already dah ada provisional diagnosis of depression. So kenapa? Why do you need to take step back untuk screen? So contoh dia macam ni. You are a surgeon, you already buat laparotomy untuk keluarkan tumor dalam patients punya usus. Lepas tu you ask your MO untuk ambil stool sample untuk check for blood, occult blood test. Boleh? Ngarut lah kan? It's ridiculous lah kan? Occult blood test is screening. So you already open up dia punya stomach dah. So sama juga, you already have patients in front of you. You've asked all the questions. Based on patient's answer, you know that patient ni ada depression. Kenapa you nak patah balik pergi buat DAS? Okay. So DAS ni kita buat dekat KK punya level, dekat counselor punya level, dekat sekolah, you letak dekat website, you buat DAS. Dah jumpa psychiatrist, tak payah buat DAS. Okay, DAS dengan psychiatrist, you nak percaya siapa?
Psychiatrist.
Okay, kalau you jawab DAS, saya suruh you buat posting dengan DAS nanti. Okay, now, tapi does DAS has any value? Does DAS have any value? If you want to use it in your investigation. So what value does DAS have?
To assess severity and also to monitor treatment response.
Okay, so tahu pun. So janganlah jawab screening. Bazir saya punya 5 minit nak explain. Okay, now, what other investigation yang you want to include other than BDI, DAS, semua tu lah? That I don't see much in answers that you all share. 1%. Okay, set person tu untuk set person ni untuk assessment of dia punya suicidal semua tu. Okay, tapi we still talking about bila kita buat investigation, apa kita punya aim of investigation? Dua kan? Diagnostic baseline. Okay, now so BDI, DAS apa sama tadi tu adalah baseline so that you can compare. But there are actually psychological tests yang sebenarnya help you to establish diagnosis. Help you to determine your diagnosis. Okay, now look back at your differential diagnosis. So you ada apa? MDD. Lepas tu? Bipolar depression. Lagi?
Schizophrenia.
Betul?
Dementia.
Apa top 3? Baru seminggu.
Vascular dementia tu.
So dementia. Okay. So can you think of any psychological investigation yang can help you to rule in or rule out dementia or a certain pasal the likelihood of dementia? apa symptoms of dementia? Yang saya kata ada dua je symptoms dementia. Number one,
Poor functioning,
poor functioning. Number two,
memory
Memory.
loss.
memory loss. So terbalik, memory loss yang penting dulu. Okay, so memory problem. So macam mana nak assess memory? Final year dah ni guys.
RSA.
Tak ada? Tak dengar. How do you assess cognitive? You pergi rumah kenangan, rumah orang tua-tua tu, you assess cognitive macam mana?
MMSE.
So mini mental state examination, MMSE. So MMSE ni investigation ke management? Investigation or management? Investigation. Biological, psychological, social, spiritual.
Biological.
Psychological.
Biological ni blood, urine, imaging, so biological lah. So it's a psychological because it a psychological assessment. It's an assessment tool untuk assess psychological construct. Psychological construct ni kognitif lah. Okay. Apa lagi contoh? Another contoh of cognitive assessment other than MMSE. Not relevant in this case, tapi it's a type of cognitive assessment.
Mocha je.
Okay, so MOCA pun untuk elderly. Yang lain? Kalau child, kita buat apa?
MCAT tu. MCAT.
MCAT tengok IQ, MCAT tengok kognitif ke? MCAT tengok autism punya symptoms. Apa? Kita nak test child punya intellectual capacity. Kita test guna apa? La haula wala quwata illa billah.
Linus ke doktor?
Linus tu nama suatu program yang dianjurkan oleh Kementerian Pendidikan Malaysia. Dia bukan cognitive assessment. Apa? IQ test lah. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan. Apa you on? IQ test lah. Kan kita nak test nama pun intellectual quotient. So kita nak test IQ. So in other cases, so IQ tu falls under psychological assessment. Now a lot of you would also include personality testing, personality assessment dalam investigation. The answer is actually not so accurate because we don't normally use personality assessment tools untuk clinical. Personality assessment tools ni biasanya kita guna untuk kerja ke, untuk benda lain lah. So kita tak guna sangat untuk clinical because bila kita nak assess personality, kita nak tahu pathological personality. Nak tahu dia cluster A, B and C. So all of this is driven from DSM-5. It's not driven from any specific psychological testing. Alright, so social. Now some of you letak dalam investigation psychological adalah family history dan sebagainya. So yang tu under social lah. And so social is when you use other people as your tools of investigation. And so social worker ke, co-worker ke, school report ke, family ke, spouse ke, semua tu adalah social part of social investigation. Alright, so included under there is you nak tengok old notes ke, you nak refer to previous doctors ke, you nak look into patient past medical records ke, so semua tu under social. Alright, so for treatment, Sophia?
For treatment, I mean for biological.
Biological?
So biological first, I like to control the comorbidities.
Okay.
So like the patient has hyperlipidemia, so I like to give
Alright, so semua tu. Alright, then?
And then she's MDD and psychosis, so I like to give antidepressant and also antipsychotic.
Okay, alright. Some of you, I notice you put antidepressant ke antipsychotic ke dekat psychological. So salah And so walaupun psychiatrist yang endorse it, it does not mean it's a psychological treatment. So it's still a form of biological treatment. So biological treatment ni dua sahaja. Medication dengan physical treatment. So physical treatment tu macam ECT, transcranial magnetic blah blah semua tu. So under pharmacological, of course you go by class of medication lah. Can you give example of antidepressant that you want to start with this patient?
Sorry, Doctor, I'm not sure yet.
Mina kan dah share few example.
So there's SSRI.
Okay. So that's the class, for example. Cepat Google. Yang lain? Mukasum? Umur?
Ya, Doktor.
Senang. You nak bagi apa? You nak gelak je depan patient.
I'm not sure the name of the medication.
Kenapa? The name tu hasn't been invented ke macam mana? Weekend you all buat apa? Lori getah. Najia?
Yes, Doctor. For since SSRI is the first line, I will maybe offer citalopram or escitalopram.
Okay, so escitalopram.
Escitalopram.
Okay, dia macam ni nak belajar ni saya nak cakap dengan you all. Kalau you berjalan-jalan di petang hari, you ambil satu buku, you pun duduk bawah pokok tu, you pun baca jenis-jenis ubat antidepresan. 1 SSRI, 1 sertraline, 2 escitalopram. There is no way you will remember that because it has no meaning to you. You might as well take engineering books, textbook from other kuliah and you baca kat bawah pokok. Because at some point you are becoming a doctor, so try to think macam seorang doktor. So imagine this is patient that come to you in your clinic. You akan duduk senyum-senyum, tak tahulah doktor, sorry lah doktor, saya tak baca lah doktor. Will you answer in such way or not? And you go back, you find, you cari buku, you go resources. Now I've given this case to you last week. Now you have not seen this patient, tapi try approach macam this is like my real patient. If this is my patient, apa yang saya nak? What do I want to give to this patient? Because believe it or not, this could be one of your patient in your final pro exam. Tapi if you do not bother untuk think about apa agaknya interpretation aku nak bagi this patient, what are the examples? The answers is all there. Your friends have already presented. You have dozens of notes from your seniors. You have Google to search and click. It's just matter of untuk finding out. Okay? Bukan ada anak 5 pun nak kena jaga pagi malam tak tidur semua tu. You're doing psychiatry posting. This is when you nak highlight. Sorry saya bebel petang-petang ni, tapi in few months time you will be graduating. Okay, you have a lot to catch up. So psychiatry is one of the easiest one. So get hold of psychiatry ni kemas-kemas sikit, and so that cepat sikit you boleh carry on with other parts of life. You nak belajar orthopedic, nak belajar ops gynae and whatnot. Okay, so try to cepat-cepat catch up sikit dengan what you need to know. Alright, now you said you want to give antidepressant, you pick one antidepressant, okay, fair enough. Now some of you mentioned tadi you nak bagi antipsychotic. Okay, kenapa nak bagi antipsychotic?
Because patient also has psychotic symptoms like delusion.
Okay, so patient has psychotic symptoms. So what antipsychotic you want to give?
Usually for MDD with psychosis, we use the atypical
so you want to
antipsychotic, such as risperidone.
Okay. Alright, so that means you treat patient with combination of escitalopram and risperidone. Okay, so that's one example of management. When it comes to pro exam, kita tak stop there, and kita akan tanya what are the common side effects and what are the things that you need to watch out for when you start patients on the risperidone and the dose of the risperidone. If patient doesn't improve with escitalopram, what do you want to consider to give to patients? Okay, so try to pick up this pace so that you apa namanya, you boleh come to the stage where bila 7 weeks down the track you'll be able untuk answer. Alright, now can we not give this patient antipsychotic? Boleh ke tak boleh? Can we treat this patient without giving patients antipsychotic? Boleh ke tak boleh?
Boleh ke?
Boleh. Kenapa boleh?
Because I think the psychotic symptoms presents after the patient has depression.
Okay.
So with the depression, the psychosis will be gone.
Okay, so very good. So unlike schizophrenia, where psychosis too is the predominant symptom. So in patient with schizophrenia, if you don't treat patient with antipsychotic, the psychosis will not disappear. Tapi in MDD with psychosis, sama juga dengan substance induced psychosis, dia punya psychosis tu ada complications. Alright, so once you treat the underlying problem, the complication tu will go away. Cuma, why do some people still give patient antipsychotic adalah, okay, nak tanya ni. Kenapa? Tetapi why do some people still give antipsychotic? Even though knowing that dia kan depressed, bagi antidepressant, settle depression dia nanti, settle dah psychotic dia tu. Why do we still need to give antidepressant? As it is? Like, why do we still need to give antipsychotic?
Because antipsychotic also has mood stabilizing effects.
Kenapa nak bagi dia mood stabilizing effect? Dia bukan ada bipolar. Mood stabilizing ni untuk bipolar.
Okay, not sure.
Betul. Possible because the psychosis itself is inducing the depression even more.
Not quite. Even though it's logical, but it's not right. Now, how long does it take for antidepressant to work?
2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, alright. So that is actually the main reason why we give patient. In fact, we give patient benzodiazepine for the same reason as well. We give patient antipsychotic for the same reason because these two medications acts quicker. Alright. Contohnya, if patients depressed with hallucination or command hallucination to ask him to kill himself, so you cannot wait for 2 weeks for that to go away. You need to give something yang will quickly act on the symptoms. So hence you need to give something yang more potent, more quicker lah. Alright. So same reason for benzodiazepine. Alright. So baca the common side effects of all these 3 classes of medication, and so that bila you discuss about this, bila you discuss about medication, you boleh ni. Sebenarnya senang je psychiatry ni. You baca pasal antidepressant, the same information tu you akan guna untuk jawab soalan pasal for anxiety as well. Okay, so when you talk about anxiety, we treat with antidepressant as well. So the same side effect yang patient dapat for antidepressant in depression, the same side effect patient dapat in anxiety, sama je. So all you need to learn adalah antipsychotic, antidepressant, benzodiazepine dengan mood stabilizer. So 4 tu je. So kita ni tak demand banyak-banyak lah. Mudah kira punya orang. Alright, so psychological intervention. Alright, now so in exam, before you go on to management, biasanya you need to highlight number 1 adalah treatment setting. Okay, where do you want to treat this patient? So inpatient or outpatient? So if you want to treat patient as inpatient, you need to give reason or justification why you want to treat this patient as inpatient. Outpatient, why? Nanti bila you present case nanti kita discuss about it lah. And then you need to mention your aim of management. So aim ni standard lah. You want to reduce symptoms, you want to improve function, and you want to prevent further relapse. So ni standard. Okay, so in order to achieve that, you need to treat patient based on biopsychosocial spiritual model. So for biological, I want to give this, and that. So for psychological, I want to do this, and that. So in exam, just highlight macam tu. Alright, so psychological nak buat apa? Nak bagi apa? Alright.
CBT doktor?
Nak straight away do CBT?
Maybe first with family support first.
Okay, apa yang much simpler that you can do?
Teach coping skill.
Okay, even simpler than that?
Psychoeducation.
Okay. You Farid tadi bagi jawapan dia terbalik. Dia bagi yang susah dulu. Okay, so Start dengan something yang easy, something yang you can do there and then. Okay. So CBT ni dia specific type of treatment yang perlu datang balik semua. That's something that you can do later. In fact, can you do CBT while patient is psychotic?
No.
Tak boleh pun kan. And you cannot do CBT while patient is profoundly depressed and hedonic, tak boleh tidur, malah you cannot do. CBT ni is a session therapy, 50 minutes, weekly, 10 session, 12 session. Patient makan pun tak, you nak suruh buat CBT. And so you do something a bit simpler, psychoeducation. So, kenapa psychoeducation penting? Kenapa psychoeducation tu sampai nak kena highlight dalam
so that the patient can have a good insight of why he or she have the symptoms and also why they must seek treatment.
Okay, so if you think about this, patient depressed. Bila dia depressed, dia tak solat. Bila tak solat, dia makin jadi depressed. So, patient carry on within the cycle sampai akhirnya jadi suicidal, psychotic dan sebagainya. Sedangkan, kenapa patient tak solat? Kenapa patient tak solat? Is it his fault that he's not praying? Kenapa patient tak solat?
Sebab dia depressed tu.
Sebab dia depressed. The anhedonia, the cognitive symptoms of depression, the low energy, the cognitive errors, the psychotic symptoms, those are the reason why dia tak able to perform prayer. So sometimes just simply explain to them apa yang pakcik experience ni sebenarnya adalah penyakit. Dia bukan salah pakcik, kan. Semua orang boleh kena sakit ni. Just kebetulan pakcik kena pada waktu ini. Dan sakit ni sakit yang boleh dirawat. Can you imagine that, saying that to somebody yang up until before seeing you, dia rasa dia dunia ni akan kiamat, dia akan mati, semua ni salah dia, all these sins in this world is because of him. And so that is why psychoeducation too is a very important aspect. We're not saying psychoeducation just for the fact, oh kita nak cerita pasal sakit, kena makan ubat. No. Sometimes psychoeducation too is therapeutic in itself. I give you another example. Patients yang ada panic attack, for example. So some of them, ada siapa-siapa pernah experience panic attack? Bagus, exam. Masa exam pun tak panik Masa exam pun tak ada berdebar, berpeluh, rasa nak muntah, rasa nak rasa getar tangan. Tak ada. Tak ada. Okay. So
Ada.
So all of us at some point in life, kecuali budak-budak yang mungkin ada masalah sikit tu, experience panic attack in life. Tapi it is not horrifying, it is not menakutkan sebab panic attack kita tu bersebab. You panic attacks because Prof Hazian tanya you soalan ke contohnya. Dia bersebab. And you haven't read anything and then you takut, you tak prepare, ataupun you you lost your logbook and then tiba besok kena submit, you become panic, you kena present, tiba laptop you crash and you tak tahu pun besok you kena present, tiba pukul 12 malam your friend bagi tahu you kena present 8 o'clock in the morning. So you have panic attack for a reason. Tapi for patient with panic disorder, they have panic attack for no reason. They wake up 2 o'clock in the morning with palpitation. So you tak rasa orang akan takut. So that's explain why some of them thought they are dying. This is sign of sakratul maut. Dia rasa ni macam kerasukan jin. Ini macam tanda dia nak mati, dia dapat kanser. So it's a very terrifying for them. Tapi bila you psychoeducate them, you explain to them yang ini sebenarnya panic attack. It's normal, ramai je orang rasa macam ni. Dan benda ni sebenarnya we can treat. It's highly treatable. So some patients get well even without treatment. Just simply by understanding apa yang dia faham. So your friend yang follow saya punya group itu, saya ada cerita tentang one of the way of emotional coping is by naming your emotion. If you don't know what you're dealing with, you'll struggle to understand. But once you know, oh, I'm dealing with guilt, I'm dealing with anger, I'm dealing with frustration, that's easier for you to tackle. So name it to tame it, kan? So once you know what you're dealing with, you know what, oh, dah kenapa pulak selfie tu? Dapat signal dah, Adlin. Okay, alright. Carry on Alright. So, so you want to do psychoeducation. Alright, so when patient dah settle sikit, apa yang atas sikit pada psychoeducation yang you can do? Tadi dia dah answer dah, saya nak suruh susun je balik. Apa? Tengok
Coping
balik
skill
atas.
tu.
So tengok balik atas. Jangan tengok atas tu. Tengok balik atas table tu. Apa benda psychological issues yang dia ada?
Dia ada personality,
Okay.
disorder dengan poor coping mechanism.
Okay. So problem dia adalah poor coping. So you have identified the problem. Now you are obliged to do something about it. So what do you want to do about it? Do you nak teach passion?
Yeah, coping skill.
Coping skill. Okay. So later nanti kita belajar macam mana nak coping, nak incorporate coping skills management in passion sprint management. So balik baca pasal coping skills. So apa example of coping skills yang kita boleh ajar dia?
Kita boleh
Problem solving.
jadi
alright.
NASA tu.
NASA? Oh, jangan guna NASA tu. NASA tu kompleks sangat. Yang simple. Yang belagak sangat. Dengar saya punya NASA tu nak cerita pasal NASA kat sini. Okay, cepat. Apa coping skills? Tadi your friend ada highlighted tadi. Saya dengar tadi. Apa?
Problem solving skills.
Problem solving skills. Dia nampak passion ni lost. Aku dah kena tipu, duit tak ada, aku nak buat apa ni, nanti rumah ni kena gada semua. Dia tak tahu nak buat apa. So, one of the way yang you boleh teach adalah you teach the problem solving. Okay, provided that you know how to solve dia punya problem lah. Okay, so problem solving ni is not about solving the problem for him. Tapi help him untuk find his ways. Okay, contohnya, okay. Nah, apa masalah yang paling besar sekali yang pakcik ada? Pasal duit lah. Okay, alright. So, let's go benda yang spesifik dulu. Untuk hari ni dan minggu ni, ada tak benda nak makan pakcik? Ada tak duit untuk belanja sehari-harian? Okay, ada. Okay, alright. Okay, so yang tu settle. Alright. So, apa yang tak settle? Yang tak settle adalah hujung bulan ni nanti pakcik kena bayar kereta. Duit tak ada ni nak bayar kereta. Okay, alright. Now, biasanya kalau ada isu duit-duit macam ni, kat mana lagi pakcik boleh dapatkan bantuan duit? Ada tak siapa-siapa yang biasanya boleh bantu pakcik kalau sesak-sesak macam ni? Dulu pernah lah cakap dengan adik boleh tolong. Okay, now adik tahu tak masalah pakcik ni? Tak, okay. Adakah pakcik rasa mungkin salah satu pilihan pada waktu ini adalah pakcik berterus terang dengan adik dan tengok sama ada adik boleh pinjamkan duit dulu untuk masa ni? Okay, so all of this are example of problem solving. Okay, so it nampak simple, tapi if you talk to patient yang depressed macam ni, they will not be able to see it. And so the reason why you should be able untuk help him out is because you're not depressed. Okay, so that's why you are the one yang will need to guide patient. Cuma beza problem solving therapy dalam intervention ni adalah we do not do it. Bukan kita okay macam ni lah pakcik bagi nombor account, nanti saya transfer. Itu bukan problem solving. Okay, kalau you kaya macam mana pun bolehlah you nak sedekah, tapi that is not the answer. Problem solving ni is about equipping or empowering patient to solve dia punya problem. Contoh, you have single mother yang ada anak yang ada autism for example, yang tak ada tempat nak tinggal for example. So you boleh je ambil dia ni, bukanlah boleh, maksudnya maybe somebody go to extent, okay, saya tolong hantarkan pergi kat rumah sini. Tapi you're not empowering them, you're just doing things for them. Okay? Tapi by empowering them, they will know how to handle the subsequent problem when it comes. Okay, so that is the difference between therapy dengan other forms of social treatment. So kita bukan Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat, kita work in the framework of clinician. Alright, so and then later baru kita go into a more specific form of therapy, macam supportive psychotherapy ke, CBT ke, interpersonal therapy ke, what not, based on apa issues yang patients ni ada. Alright, so sama juga social. Social apa example dia? Kita sebut hari tu. Apa lagi social? Apa social intervention? Legal help. Okay, alright. So, kenapa you rasa legal help akan membantu dia punya depression?
Because of the scam.
Okay.
Okay.
So one of the symptoms of depression adalah helplessness. Faham tak? Helplessness. Helplessness ni maksudnya apa? Tanya Salma lah. Sama, helplessness ni apa dalam bahasa Melayu?
Means tak boleh help. Tak boleh help himself.
So dia
I forgot what's
rasa
help. Dia rasa
bantu, tolong.
tolong. Yes, tak boleh
So,
tolong.
so dia rasa macam, so he feels like there's nothing in this world that will able to help him. And then suddenly you kata, ada orang boleh tolong pakcik. Ni saya tunjukkan, bagi nombor ni, pakcik jumpa orang ni, orang ni akan tolong. And so that in itself akan alleviate one of the symptoms of depression. Okay? So for example, females yang kena ada domestic violence, for example, dia rasa, this is my fate. Saya memang ditakdirkan jadi isteri yang malang. Saya memang ditakdirkan jadi perempuan yang tidak dihargai dan sebagainya. And then you highlight them that that's not true. There are people that can help you. There are people that can sort problem, sort your issues with you. And then they akan rasa, oh, there's help after all. Okay, the strongest predictor for suicide. Okay, so one of the strongest predictor of suicide is hopelessness. Okay, it is not psychosis, it is not depressed, it's not insomnia, it is not poor appetite, poor energy. The strongest predictor of suicide in depression adalah hopelessness and losing hope. But once there's a hope, so normally suicidality tu akan reduce. So hope tu can be in any form. It can be spiritual, social, psychological, biological. Okay, contoh biological hope. Contoh dia rasa, tak boleh tidur. Sekali kita bagi ubat, dia boleh tidur. Oh, rupanya there's a hope after all for me to sleep. So it can also come in the form of spiritual. Dia rasa, oh Tuhan tak nak tolong. And then ada orang bagi tahu, that's okay, no matter how many sins do you have, Allah is forgiven. You will be as clean as somebody who has no sin at all if you repent. So and then they rasa, oh, there's a hope after all. I'm not a bad person. I'm not going to hell. So this is an example of integrating all of this dalam clinical perspective. Okay, faham tak ni? Faham Okay. So kalau you use the same framework daripada awal sampai akhir, you should be able to say, okay, bring on any depression case. End of block, short case, long case, PMP, final pro, I'll know how to answer it now. Guna je framework saya ni. Tapi kena baca lah. Kalau antidepressant apa pun tak tahu, janganlah kata bring it on. Okay? So kena complete. So the next thing yang you kena improve adalah plucking patient who are depressed. Yang ni saya tak boleh ajar. Yang ni you need to do it, you need to find depression patient, you need to belajar. Okay. Macam Salma, if you haven't had any chance untuk find suitable patient, you get your friend to be depressed. Jangan make your friend depressed. Ask them to role play as a depressed patient. Then you can start. In fact, others pun, that's how we learn. Because sometimes you do not get opportunity to see a wide range of patients. Do it. Okay, alright. Spiritual semua tu nanti kita sentuh kemudian lah. I just want to focus on management, basic management of depression. Okay, now saya nak completekan okay, anything on depression before saya go into anything. Any questions? Tak ada? Kalau tak ada, kita kejap saya nak present dulu. Okay, kalau tak ada, kita carry on sebab we haven't touched anything on bipolar or manic just yet. So kita kena completekan sikit so that you understand. Psychotherapy tu jangan risaulah. Kita cover insyaAllah. So, nampak screen saya? You tahu tak, saya tak lunch lagi ni. Nampak tak Maggie depan ni dah kembang dah Maggie ni. Okay. Alright.
Nampak.
So, nampak apa? Nampak Maggie ke nampak slide?
Slide.
Nampak slide. Okay, so you started patient on sertraline 25 mg on night and zolpidem 10 mg on night. So zolpidem ni is sleeping medication lah. Ubat medik. Dia bukan benzodiazepine, it's a type of medication yang specifically kita panggil Z drugs, specifically untuk insomnia. So you started him on sertraline. Sertraline ni apa?
SSRI.
SSRI. Okay. Alright. So what would you counsel the patient regarding the medication? Okay, this is something that you need to read. You need to know about side effects of medication, how does medication works. Alright. So what other non-pharmacological treatment kita dah discuss. Alright. So sambung. 2 weeks later, he came back to your clinic. He reported feeling cured. He was so thankful to you for your help in helping him to find himself back. So in fact, during the clinic session tu, dia hug me. Dia hug saya. Dia kata, terima kasih doktor sebab saya dah sihat dah sekarang ni. Alhamdulillah. So he reported that his mood, sleep and appetite have now improved. He's now back to his routine of going to masjid and happy to share with his friends on how he has recovered. Okay. Now, are you happy?
As for now, yes.
So Faris happy? Orang lain happy?
Yes.
Happy. Hajar pun happy. Yang lain?
Happy kata.
Afif pun happy juga. Okay, semua orang happy.
Yes,
Hajar?
very happy.
Sama, very happy. So best daripada orang lain.
Bipolar.
Siapa menjerit tu? Siapa tu?
Nik.
Nik. Okay. Alright, so semua orang happy. Adeline, you happy ke tak? Adeline tak happy. Kenapa Adeline tak happy?
Because patient improve after 2 weeks, which is less likely based on the drugs punya effect.
Okay. Alright. So Adeline je yang akan do the right thing. Yang lain semua ni akan causing a lot more trouble. Okay. Now, you shouldn't be happy bila you dapat this kind of history. Okay. Ada 2 reason why you shouldn't be happy. One reason adalah apa yang Adin sebut tadi betul. It's too quick to say that patient is cured. So cured is a very strong word. Patient is already in remission. Normally, how long does it take untuk patient achieve remission? So biasanya 4 to 6 months. So it will take some time. 2 weeks ni is rather miraculous. Number 2, okay, siapa boleh bagi second reason why you shouldn't be too happy with this progress? Okay, this can only be answered kalau you dah study pasal psychopharmacology. Okay, so apa therapeutic range of sertraline? Orang yang present ni patut tahulah siapa present hari tu. Siapa yang present depression treatment? Saya tak ingat. Siapa present tu? Atira. So apa therapeutic dose for sertraline?
Therapeutic
Cepat. Sebab itulah jangan just copy slide daripada senior tukar background je. So you have to understand what you presenting.
tak ingat doktor.
You yang present tak ingat, you rasa orang-orang lain yang duduk-duduk sambil tengok-tengok window lain, sambil buka-buka Google apa semua tu, sambil cari-cari signal apa semua akan ingat. Lain lagi lah tak ingat. Okay. So 50 to 150. So basically 25 ni apa? Subtherapeutic. Okay, so you shouldn't expect people cured for meningitis with subtherapeutic antibiotics. Okay, so same goes with antidepressants. So patients still subtherapeutic. So in fact, what I did was I asked patient to wait outside the room and I see the wife separately to get more information from the wife. Okay, because when I saw patient with wife, bila patient kata dia happy, dia apa semua tu, wife was not happy at all. Wife in fact muka dia sangat ketat sekali. So I know something was not right. So I asked him, okay pakcik, apa kata pakcik duduk dengan saya punya student dekat luar sekejap, cerita sikit macam mana pakcik sembuh semua tu, saya nak borak-borak dengan isteri kejap. So the moment the wife step in dalam the interview, so wife was crying and complained that he has changed since last week. He is now become more moody. He became easily irritated at small things, talkative and demanding. There was one time he was driving his wife to the city. They had discussion, they had argument in the car. So he stopped by the road and suruh wife dia balik jalan kaki. So he became very irritable, unlike how he has been for the last 6 months. He did not sleep at all for the last 3 days and spent time reading old religious books. He became preoccupied with his ideas of wanting to start up a new tahfiz.
One week, 2 weeks. 2 weeks just now.
Baca balik.
3 days. For the last
one.
One
Since
week
last
ada.
1 week.
Okay.
Changed since
Saja-
last week.
saja je nak mengelirukan tu. 3 hari dekat situ tu saja nak make you think. And so dah 1 week already, so it's hypomanic already, okay? So bila it's manic already. And so dia punya final diagnosis now apa?
Bipolar 1 disorder.
Good, bipolar 1 disorder. Okay, now the next question is, what do you want to do now? Okay, kita pusing balik semula lah. Siapa yang saya tak tanya lagi? Faris dah, Syazwani dah, Al-Jihad dah. Okay, kita pusing balik lah. Okay. Okay, Salma, what do you want to do? Management. You still need to use same framework, but now you need to alter your management. So what we did before, benzodiazepine, semua tu dah invalid because patient came with different problem now. Apa awak freezing tu? Uzai?
For this patient, I would like to off the antidepressive punya medication.
So I would give the.
So
Hello?
I would like to.
Salma pun jawab, Uzai pun jawab. Ikutlah.
Okay, Salma, you go first.
Salma go first.
Oh, okay. So because he's on citrulline, so we stop the citrulline and we start giving him the stabilizer.
Okay.
The
So now you are treating him as a treatment for mania. So you are no longer treating him for a case of depression. So to treat mania episode, what options do you have? So biological, what options do you have?
We have monotherapy.
Okay. Monotherapy or combination? So for monotherapy, what
combination
options,
therapy?
So what options do you have for monotherapy?
Monotherapy. Oh,
okay. What are the class of medication that you can use?
We can use mood stabilizer.
Like
mood stabilizer. Second one.
Antipsychotic.
Okay.
Antipsychotic.
So as I mentioned, pusing-pusing tu je ubat dia. Okay. Cuma you need to know macam mana nak guna dia. Okay. You have monotherapy. Maknanya in exam you can answer. Options are either monotherapy or combination. So advantage of monotherapy is patient is patient have poor compliance. However, with monotherapy, sometimes patients tak achieve remission. So patients need combination. So options that you have, sama ada monotherapy for combination, akan fall within mood stabilizer or antipsychotic or combination of mood stabilizer or antipsychotic. Alright. Now, for bipolar depression, you have another option, which is antidepressant. So, antidepressant in combination with mood stabilizer or antipsychotic. So you work around these options saja. Later on, you need to build up your knowledge in terms of apa options of mood stabilizer that you have, apa options of antipsychotic that you have. And for each of medication, you need to know at least dia punya dosing dia and dia punya common side effects. But some are very specific. Contohnya, if we talk about lithium, you need to know about lithium toxicity. We don't talk about sertraline toxicity. We don't talk about risperidone toxicity. So for that reason, you like it or not, you have to remember and understand about lithium toxicity because it's very specific. Okay, we won't ask you about toxic level of escitalopram because it's not known, it's not common, it's just not a major thing that you have to remember. But lithium toxicity ni is important. Even though you don't do psychiatry, tapi if you do emergency, you dapat patients yang ada psychiatric issue on lithium, you need to be aware of possibility of lithium toxicity because lithium toxicity is not psychiatry management. Lithium toxicity ni siapa punya management?
Medical.
Or ICU. Depends lah. So kalau patient koma, tak duduk medical ward juga, dia duduk ICU. Okay, so you need to know. Alright. So you want to stop dia punya medication, you want to change it to some other medications. Okay, so ni you need to learn. Alright. So same goes to psychological, social. So you need to tailor now according to your new diagnosis. Alright now. So you start the patient on lithium carbonate 300 mg BD and quetiapine 200 mg. Quetiapine ni apa?
Okay.
Apa?
Antipsychotic.
Antipsychotic. So you choose combination therapy. Alright, so you start patient on lithium carbonate and quetiapine. A month later, he presented to emergency department following 2-day history of vomiting and diarrhea. On examination, he was noted to be drowsy, confused with significant tremor. His BP was 168 over 102, heart rate under 18, respiratory rate 20. So what is your diagnosis now and how would you manage him? Okay, now, apa you punya differential diagnosis for his presentation now? Okay, this is psychiatric emergency. You haven't gone through psychiatric emergency, tapi I want you to be thinking. If you have read somewhere, you have come across some of this we've discussed in year 4 masa introductory. If you have good recollection, you might be able to answer. Okay, cepat. Apa possibility dia? Ni your patient ni.
Lithium toxicity.
Okay, so one thing yang you kena consider adalah lithium toxicity. 2 reasons. One, he's on lithium. Second is symptoms dia fit into characteristic of lithium toxicity. Symptom yang mana lithium toxicity?
Vomiting, diarrhea and significant tremor.
Okay, semua tu sebenarnya adalah symptoms lithium toxicity. Number 2, nak advance sikit. Number 2 apa? Other options ni you should be able to answer even though you have not done psychiatry or you are not doing psychiatry. Because you are going to be doctors, so you need to know.
Patient started to be hypovolemic, shock.
Okay, so patient in shock. Kenapa pula BP dia 168 kalau patient in shock? That doesn't fit shock punya picture kan? Heart rate 188, but patient 168. Apa lagi?
Patient may have hepatic encephalopathy due to the
Due to?
because of side effect of drugs causing hepatotoxicity.
Okay, it's a bit far-fetched, jauh sikit, tapi again, great, as a doctor you need to be thinking along this. Could this be hepatobiliary punya problem? Okay, lagi? Tadi yang dekat-dekat sikit, yang jauh-jauh sangat merantau.
Diabetic ketoacidosis.
Okay, so diabetic ketoacidosis, good. Lagi?
Myocardial infarction.
Myocardial infarction. Kenapa dia drowsy and confused and tremor Jauh sangat. Boleh lah, tapi you not be able untuk capture all the symptoms. That doesn't explain why patient ada tremor. Kenapa myocardial infarction ada tremor?
Ni ada electrolyte imbalance tu.
Electrolyte imbalance bukan diagnosis ya?
Ya tu.
So kenapa dia ada electrolyte imbalance?
Hypertensive crisis.
Hypertensive crisis. Oh, betul. That's one of the possibility dengan drowsy, confused. Tapi 168 ni shouldn't give you hypertensive crisis. You probably see hundreds of people out there in the market ke mana-mana yang walking happily with blood pressure of 168. Hari tu patient saya Muaz tu 16 years old tu blood pressure 168. Tak ada drowsy pun, tak ada confused pun. So a bit jauh sikit lah. With psychiatry, apa psychiatry emergency? Selain lithium toxicity, apa psychiatry? Psychiatry emergency ni tak banyak pun, 2-3 je. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Okay, so later you baca pasal neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Especially bila dia ada hemodynamic instability. Okay, patient ada tremor. Apa lagi yang you kena consider?
Extrapyramidal symptoms.
Okay, so extrapyramidal side effects. Cuma it doesn't explain the rest of the symptoms. Okay, so work out your diagnosis based on apa yang ada. Cuma syarat je nak come up with diagnosis, you kena ada pool of diagnosis dalam kepala you. Okay, so kalau dalam kepala you ada diabetes, pneumonia, ada lagi conjunctivitis, so payahlah kita nak relate sikit. Okay, so you need to be thinking, cubalah fikir systematically sikit. So CNS, apa possible CNS, respiratory, cardiovascular. So all of these are possibilities. Okay, alright. So, sorry saya membebel panjang, tapi saya nak you faham that you need to learn systematically. You nak baca buku pokok tak ada masalah, carry on, tapi please approach it systematically. So the best way untuk learn psychiatry adalah by clinical cases. Okay, so contoh, I give you example. Those yang attended my clinic, those yang attended my round today, or menyelinap dalam round saya pagi tadi, you had the chance to see patient with catatonia, kan? Alright. So siapa yang balik dia baca pasal catatonia? Siapa yang tak ada, you are very ayat nak guna. Saya guna bahasa baik sikit lah. You are wasting the opportunity. Because kalau you jalan-jalan, ada tak you macam hari Sabtu, you jalan-jalan pergi dengan member lepak dekat ECM, tiba-tiba you berbual tentang catatonia, ada tak? Ada, saya dia mengangguk. No, you're not talking about catatonia on daily basis. You only learn and read catatonia where it's relevant. Now, when you had the opportunity, that's when you learn. Because bila you jumpa, apa dia, kenapa dia cakap macam ni? Oh, catatonia. Tadi doktor tanya tadi tak tahu nak jawab apa benda. So basically you are creating receptor in your brain. So bila you read, whatever you read tu will have somewhere to attach to. As opposed to if you reading it out of, macam you baca Quran lah kan, malam Jumaat you baca surah Kahfi, kan? Malam Sabtu you baca DSM-5. So it will not, you dapatlah berkat kot, tapi you will not be able untuk faham. And so even without revising on catatonia ke what not, 3 months down the track, kalau you dapat soalan daripada examiner pasal catatonia, you terus ingat, oh aku tengok Danish hari tu, catatonic. Balik tu aku terus baca. So ini yang hari tu doktor cerita. Ini simptom dia. Tengok Danish je ingat dah. At least 3 symptoms tu dah ada. Mutism, negativitism, flexibility, terus ingat. So even though you have not revised DSM-5 for quite sometimes, you ingat Danish, you ingat catatonia. So that's how you learn. Okay. So same like any other cases. So we grow because the more cases we see, because we are clinician. Tapi kalau you belajar out of nowhere, you will not be able to appreciate apa yang you lah. Okay. Larat lagi tak korang ni? 4 dah kita. Okay, alright. Now, so maybe what we'll do, kita break 5 minutes and then we'll get your friends untuk present maybe the first part of psychotherapy tu, and then kita try find some other time untuk ni lah, untuk carry on. Boleh ya?
Ya, dah. Saya ada. Saya ada one question aja. This question. Oh, sorry ada. Sambil-sambil this patient, do we consider continuing the antidepressant ada? Can we hold antidepressant dulu?
Okay, so it really depends sama ada dia ada depressive symptom lagi atau tak. So some of them do have mixed symptom. Maksudnya dia ada both at the same time, simultaneously. But some, itu yang kita panggil sebagai switching in polarity. Maknanya from one polar to another polar. So if he is no longer manic, then he's no longer depressed, no point giving antidepressant. Kalau dekat ward sekarang, you boleh clerk patient nama Rosli. So patient Rosli ni is bipolar, currently in depressive state. So dia boleh cerita what happened bila dia manic dulu and what happened bila dia depressed. And you can see the differences in comparison.
Okay,
kita break sekejap ya.
Okay.
Kita sambung kumpas.
This guy.